Good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. I'm Brian Prudhomme. He's Dave Cook. I'll be with you for the next 3 hours. This show 10 to noon, and then Monster Weekend kickoff noon to 1. Dave Cook, you've been off the grid a little bit this week with family in town, and Greg Grell's going to take your chair at noon, but I'll have you for the next 2 hours. Good morning, sir.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, it's good to be back amongst the living. We've been able to have family up and do a lot of the touristy things and check out their favorite restaurants and, check out their favorite drinking establishment. We were there a couple times this week.
There you go.
And, Dave Hoops has a great place and a great relaxed atmosphere. And even when it's full, it's like comfortable. And we were there for more than one night. And but we went up the shore and did some of the tourist stuff and Wooden Canal. And what was weird in Canal this week is that there were parking spots.
Right.
Like if you went to Canal and needed a spot to just pull over and throw the old handicap sticker on because of our folks in the car, there were spots, a lot of spots. And we spent some time at Father Time. And so, yeah, it's been a great week. Put up our feet a little bit. Haven't seen Jenny and Jason for a long time. They were in town for the first time since pre-COVID. So it was good.
Sounds like a good time. Sounds like you supported a lot of area businesses. A lot of area businesses support us. Let's pay homage to them right away.
Absolutely. Let's start with Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater right downtown, Tavern on the Hill, the location in Proctor, and the location in Two Harbors, which we also stopped at. Stewart's Bike, Sports, and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, Assisted Living Locators, free to use and help your loved ones locate assisted living, memory care, and independent living. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. And Mount Royal Bottle Shop, and I left them for last, Brian, because we had a great experience.
I was going to say, you said you had a story. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So we went there with Aaron on today's Saturday, right? So we went there with Aaron on Wednesday, Jason, Jenny, and I, and did a lot of perusing and bought a lot of stuff. And Aaron was able to put in his number, so he's got some additional customer
So he's in the
funds.
rewards program.
He is in the rewards program, and so that stuff's going to come back for him as well. So, I mean, that was point one.
Right.
But then last night we went back, and Aaron wasn't with us. And Jenny...
And you put his number down, so he got more rewards points.
We may have done that. That's not
Smart.
where I was going.
Smart.
But Jenny and Jason went in because some of the stuff that we bought the night before, or the 2 nights before, they wanted to get a little bit more of it. And they went in, and of course, it's not their place, right? It's our place, but they went in together. And they were kind of wandering around looking for, what it is that they wanted. Went up to the front and generally explained, because they didn't look at the label, right? I told them where we bought it, in roughly the right area. But they had no idea, what it was called, and so they spent a little bit of time with the folks there. And then one of the salespeople said, well, now, wait a minute. You said you were here the other day. What's the customer number? So he got the customer number, looked up Aaron's purchase, right? Took them right to the spot, and they bought some additional stuff. But one of the things that we bought, they did not have, they sold out of. So then they spent some time and talked to him about a few other things they had that were very similar, and they walked out with another $100 spent. That kind of customer service, right? That kind of customer service is amazing, because so many places would have said, I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have any of that information, and gosh, I'm here behind my register and I'm really comfortable. Instead, they took them around the whole place and showed them a bunch of different stuff. They bought filthy cherries. They did all kinds of stuff.
Nice. That is outstanding customer service. As somebody who's worked in sales before, not always particularly well, it's amazing how customer service and upselling can go hand in hand, because you said they had a great experience, but they spent $100 more. Yeah. That's a win for everybody.
It's not really upselling when the reason they're buying it is because your knowledge and
inadvertent upselling is fun too.
100% what it was. Anyways, hat tip to them. And if this is your first time listening to the program and you're thinking of some libations, go up to Mount Royal Bottle Shop, ask some questions, and get some guidance.
And they also have Hoops Brewing product at Mount Royal.
Yes,
we will talk to Dave Hoops in about 25 minutes. He's part of a star-studded lineup today. We've got Dave Hoops at about 10:30. We've got Kara Goucher at just after 11. We've got Jay Hagan at about 11:25, and we've got Eric Lofald to close out the show. So it is a guest-laden holiday weekend, and there's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of the holiday, I consider it a holiday weekend because there's a lot of celebratory stuff you can still do. But I did get a kick out of an exchange I had with some neighbors yesterday. I mentioned I've been walking a lot. I've been putting a lot of mileage on because I've got some time off this week. And I sarcastically quipped, happy 5th of July. Because yesterday was July 5th, and I could have certainly wished you a happy 6th of July. In fact, that's how nice I am. I will. Happy 6th of July to you today, Dave.
Well, thank you.
But the funny response was they said, happy belated 4th of July. And I thought, well, no, go ahead and just change the date.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good, though. That's well thought.
Yes.
What that is. That's an instant reaction with somebody who's thinking.
Well, and the reason that I consider it a holiday weekend, I feel bad for my canine friends. My dogs are having a hell of a weekend because
awful.
The explosiveness, the firework display, the fun of the various firecrackers, et cetera, that can be had, they don't have a deadline. The 4th of July is over. The explosives outside my house, they're not.
Well, see, then maybe this is my PSA. So I have the 100-pound German Shepherd,
Right.
who is, very stoic and everything until you start shooting fireworks over the top of my house.
Right.
Could you stop? Like, I understand that you want fireworks and stuff, and you can have that in your yard and everything. But if you're shooting stuff off, avoid my home, because we had 2 or 3 that were shot low and above our house. And my poor dog, hides. Like, he's not afraid of thunderstorms. He's not afraid of anything but fireworks. And, he can, if you're going to shoot fireworks and they're 2 blocks away and he is like, okay, this isn't cool, and goes, that's one thing. But when it's a constant pound, you've put the dog catatonic. Like, he didn't go outside for a day, bro.
Right.
And
there have been shootout scenes in movies that are quieter than some of the explosives going on outside my house. And I'm with you. I don't want anybody not to enjoy this. Right. I remember being a kid and being able to do these kinds of things, and they're fun. But some of the proximity, I agree with you. There was one time where I stood up in my living room, and this was on the 4th. It was 10, 11 o'clock at night. I stood up in my living room, and I didn't know if anybody was out there, if anybody could hear me. But the sparks and the colors were so close to me. I turned, and in my living room window, I said, "Are you shooting these at me? Am I your target?"
Yeah, that's the thing. So have fun, have all the fireworks you want. Don't shoot it over my house. Like, seriously, don't shoot it over my house. You're going to kill, my dog will die from a heart attack. I honestly believe that. He is so panicked by it when it's close like that. Man alive. I mean, I'm going to get off the soapbox here in a second. But
I was going to say, I'm a fan of fireworks, but I'm a much bigger fan of dogs.
Please enjoy responsibly. How about that?
With so many things, we have to say that. But all of that said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the fireworks theme today anyway.
Not going to shoot it over your house, though, Brian.
Exactly. We're going to shoot them right here in the studio, and hopefully everybody's safe.
Yep.
Hopefully all of our digits will still be intact, and I'm not talking numbers. But several years ago, because we are literally almost 7 years as a show, I think this was year 1 or year 2. We were in a different building, on a different frequency, in a different time slot. It was you, me, and I think Steve Patosha was part of that show too. Our 4th of July theme was, and we minimized it to players. Of the Wild, the Wolves, the Vikings, and the Twins, who's the player that fires you up, like a firework type theme? And then who's the player that makes your head explode because they do some things that you just go, why are you doing that? Or why are you on this team? And that may come up again today. It's a little bit of a rerun, although we don't believe in best of type shows, maybe because we couldn't find any, but we don't necessarily redo topics, but we're just slightly altering this one. We're not going to minimize it to just players. We are going to minimize it to just current state of the team, because we've noticed over the past few weeks when we do current and historical topics with those big 4 teams, we get into a conversation for a bit too long, and whoever goes last gets really rushed. So we're hoping with just current state of affairs that we can balance the time with this. But this can be a player. This can be a coach. This can be an overall theme. This can be a general manager. This can be a habit. We're going to talk about what fires us up about these big 4 teams, because we know that Minnesota doesn't do a lot of clutch winning. And some people might ask, well, why are you such big fans of them still? We're going to tell you. And then there are still going to be some things that make your head explode, because let's face it, if they didn't, we might not have a sports talk show. So if everybody wins, what are we going to talk about?
Here's the question on this. So we always talk about, one of the problems here is that we hang out together too much. We think alike.
This week is the exception.
Maybe. We'll find out,
right.
won't we? That'll be the interesting. All right, so I'll pick the league you want to start.
Okay.
All right, so let's go with the Minnesota Wild.
All right, so which side of the proverbial coin are we starting on? Are we starting on why we're fired up?
You pick.
All right, I'm going to go positives first.
Okay.
So why I'm fired up about this team, I told you before the show that I tried hard not to take low-hanging fruits with each team. The Wild is the one where I think it's maybe the most difficult not to, because I came up with a couple of things, Number one is they're going to have dollars to spend sooner than later. And this team is going to need a bit of an overhaul, I believe. And you're going to have the financial flexibility to do it. So to that end, I'm going to say in Bill Guerin for now, I trust. Not sure I have a lot of reason to. Maybe it's just the simple fact that when he was an active player, I was a big Bill Guerin fan. But I do tend to trust him. And the other reason that I'm fired up about this team, and this is going to be a common theme because I do like some of the future situations of the Big Four from Minnesota. The young core, as much as they have still to do to fix this team, you've got a young defenseman that is the real deal, Brock Faber. You think you drafted another one. In Booyam goes the dynamite. That's going to be my guy from here on out. And then with Boldy not being particularly old, Kaprizov contract situation still scares me, but not particularly old. And Rossi or Rossi, and if that's the biggest debate about him is how do you say it, seems to have some NHL talent to him. So there's young core to get excited about that should be here a while. You get the dollars to add something to them, and they should be okay. Now, what I don't like about that take from myself is none of that is breaking news. But with the Wild, it was harder to do more of a deep dive.
Yeah, the things that is explosive to me is what I wrote, the under 27.
So the stuff that fires you up.
Yeah, I wrote the under 27 crew as well because you mentioned a couple of them, but you got to add Kuznetsov, you got to add Ogren. That's right. And then you have to add the Yurov kid that is in Russia again this year. And all of a sudden, you've got half a team of kids. And so I agree with you on that. And I'm just going to flick it over to the part that head explode.
That makes your head explode?
We did it again. And that is, could you stop signing pretty good
middling veterans to long extensions,
long-term contracts? Like this guy that they signed from Colorado might be the missing piece, but he might just be another 30-year-old that you signed to 4 years, and you're choking the life out of your kids.
And there's another one on the blue line that I don't want to talk a lot about right now because it's going to be buy or sell topic for me because, and again, that makes it sound like I'm talking absolutely out of both sides of my mouth because I just said in Bill Guerin I trust, but it has everything to do with being a Bill Guerin fan as a kid. When he does these types of contracts, do you trust him?
Well, God, do you trust the long-term build here? Like part of it you have to, right? But you can't keep signing. Like the guy you're going to talk about, he's in an important spot, right? But the other guys they've signed, I mean, Zuccarello, okay, you want to make the argument he's in an important spot? Sure. Is Hartman important? Yep. But he's not 2 years no move trade guy. You know, certainly Freddie Gaudreau is not a no-move guy,
right?
You know, and you like Foligno a lot. He's not a no-move guy. I mean, but they all have those contracts. And so why did you tie yourself up? I mean, that's the head explode. You can hear it now. It's just about ready to, so let's move on.
All right. So for me, the head explode part, since I was agreeing with most of what you said, and I don't want to do what I do with Dave Hoops too often and go, yep, what he said. Mine is a little bit more nothing to do with the Wild from a personnel standpoint. It's the fan reaction. And I've said it 8 million times on this show.
That's good.
It makes my head explode that the state of Minnesota, that is aptly called the state of hockey, loves to just hug everything about the Wild no matter what they do. Now, I understand there's some frustration, but it's minimal. The Wild really have never been bad. Even year one, they probably exceeded expectations for an expansion team. They've never been bad. So I understand some of the credit that they get. You haven't had the proverbial bottoming out from this franchise. Maybe if you did, you'd be in a better place because you hear of teams that bottomed out, got good draft picks, and ascended accordingly. Yep. But it's the simple fact that the Wild do things that if the Vikings, Twins, or even now the Timberwolves did, they would be verbally chastised on the regular.
Oh, yeah, by us.
But with the Wild, they have a palace of a stadium. It's this state's favorite sport for the most part. So there is just nothing wrong with anything this team does, and we're supposed to get incredibly excited about it no matter what. And the fans still show out because of the sport and because of the building. Maybe the waiting lists are shrinking, or you'll have some games where it's not filled to the rafters, but for the most part it is. But again, I'm with you with the worship of veterans with the extended contracts. And, people point to the acquisition of the Flower, of this ownership trying to win now, and other teams don't do that in this state. What's it given you?
Yeah.
That part makes my head explode too.
I think what it's given us is the chance to have our head explode.
Or what it's given us is the fans to stay married to him even longer.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, so let's move. Do you want to do, let's see, let's do the NBA. They're in kind of a quiet
The Timberwolves. Time. So what fires me up about this team is almost everything you saw in the past month and a half. I mean, the core is absolutely there. Between Towns, if he stays long enough, Ant is potentially, if not currently, a superstar in the league. I've already said the coming out party of Jaden. You've got Finch locked up long term. Mike Conley might be in the twilight of his career, but you're certainly getting some good years out of him. This team gets it. This team had playoff experience, both in the positive, and let's face it, the Dallas series was ugly, in the negative. I do think they're going to learn from this. The Timberwolves are in a weird spot. We do this topic a year ago, and there's a litany on one side versus the other. It's completely flipped 12 months later.
Yeah, I wrote that legitimately now, for the first time since Garnett, we have ourselves an alpha. Like we haven't,
and you may have yourself a destination that other players want to be in as a result.
100%. But we've messed around with guys who we thought were alphas. Love for a while, Jimmy for a year.
Not Andrew Wiggins.
Well, but
D-Low, emphasis on low.
Yeah, no, but we legitimately have the guy that everybody will follow. And yes, it could be a spot where people come, and that's great. But Ant's going to make everybody on the team better because he'll demand things, and teammates will follow. Like Jimmy's biggest issue is he was a toolbox along with trying to be an alpha.
Right.
Ant just
he was a toolbox of an alpha.
Yeah. Well, and I just don't think he is. I think that a guy that belittles other people isn't
right.
That guy.
Alpha doesn't mean best player, leading scorer. There's a leadership element that needs to be there.
And Jimmy wins, but Jimmy wins because he grinds so hard. But his leadership,
when he puts the fear of God in everybody else
on his team, that's not leadership. Anyways, that would be my reason to be all fired up. What makes my head explode is, could we not already christen them as champions? Like, good Lord. I mean, you're
going to be mortified next year that they think they're going to show up and be right back in the Western Conference Finals.
Yes.
Yep.
That to me is, they're going to be good, right? But just because they made it to the conference finals, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to go back there. Let's just rein that in a little bit.
Right. So the reaction to it, much like me with the Wild, the fans' perspective is what makes your head explode. For me, I picked a couple. I cheated a little bit, and I did multiples for a lot of these, but I picked a couple. For one, when Rudy Gobert was acquired, and initially it didn't go very well, the Herschel Walker comparisons were everywhere. I'm even more apt to make them now, because the biggest problem with the Herschel Walker acquisition was the incorrect usage of him. Herschel Walker was a north-south runner. I believe it was Bob Schnelker that made him go east-west a ton, and nothing worked. I love Rudy Gobert. I will start with that. But I watched this team misuse him horribly so often, and then he just gets dogged because his reputation and his salary is what it is. First of all, he got absolutely destroyed for supposedly being the reason that Luka daggered him in that game 2, and they lost by a point, and the series shifted completely. I was about to say the series sifted. I'm not sure how that goes. But
yeah.
Same 6-1.
The Apple phone would be crazy about that, but all right.
6-1, half dozen in the other. But to me, everybody said, well, that's the defensive player of the year, and he got torched. Yeah, he's not the defensive player of the year guarding a guard out on the perimeter. Let's not do that.
Well, and can we say not just a guard?
Right, Luka Doncic.
Yes.
But at the same time, the misusage isn't just defensively. I look at the way they use Rudy on the offensive end sometimes. I'm going, no, you can't do that.
Right.
When you feed him in transition or have him put the ball on the deck and make a move to the rim, no. He is the lob guy. He is the putback guy. He is 15 and 12, and that is it. Don't try to make him into a 30-point scorer. So that is one of the things that makes my head explode watching the Timberwolves. The other is, as much as I said the core is there, beyond them, I don't know what is there. The bench is full of a bunch of guys that you go, if he takes the next step, besides Naz Reid, that part of the bench is wonderful. But if, because Alexander Walker, towards the end of the playoffs, we went, oh,
who's that guy?
He's just a role player. Why is he still shooting? I didn't mind Morris, but I don't know if they'll bring him back. Slow-Mo's already gone. We'll talk about that during buy or sell. I just don't know depth-wise. We talk about the Vikings being paper thin. It's less noticeable in the NBA, obviously. But I wonder if it comes down to it, does the bench have enough? So, and then there's the ownership situation. If you want to go there, it makes your head explode because everything in Timberwolves country, so to speak, looks pretty good. Who's running the show? We don't know.
Yeah, exactly correct. All right, so let's move forward. Let's see. The Twins are in season, so we'll do them last. Let's do the Vikes.
What fires you up about the Vikings? I want to hear you first because your NFL takes are always deeper. and a little more appreciative and sometimes unappreciative than mine.
Yeah, no, I think the low-hanging fruit is Flores. I think that with the influx of talent that can run his system, our defense might be pretty good. The combination of a little bit more talent and a lot more time, and I just think our defense can be exceptional. I do think we have a top wide receiver duo, and so I think that's pretty well as well. But the thing that's overlooked, which gets me excited, is I think our tackle duo is really good.
Yeah.
And if you can get a quarterback who's coming and then a new guy, it's a situation where they don't have to try to get the ball out in 2.1 seconds because your blind side's covered and you have some receivers, I think that's a pretty good reason to be fired up about this team.
I would agree with that. You may have said that you took low-hanging fruit by taking Flores. I'm not sure if I took lower or not because I simply went with the fact that Justin Jefferson is locked up for the next handful of years. Because to me, it's the only question mark that you don't have is the wide receiver position. Now, Jordan Addison's turned out to be wonderful, but JJ is otherworldly at that position. Because with Flores, I agree with you, but are we one good defensive season away from him being a head coach?
Yes.
We've talked about that over and over.
Well, maybe.
And it won't be here.
Should be, but
right.
Not should be here. He should be, but that's an entirely
correct.
different show.
The political turmoil could be completely different, and we'll wait and see how that pans out. You look at the running back position, and that's a question mark. We like Aaron Jones, but it's a one-year deal. Ty Chandler still needs to develop. I'll get to the running game and what makes my head explode as well, because there's just something about it that makes me shrug my shoulders. Love the defensive acquisitions on paper. Haven't seen them on the field at all. Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yep.
You know, quarterback that has been drafted very high and then fizzled, a.k.a. because he went to the Jets. Everybody does that. Question mark there. Guy behind him everybody wants to see yesterday. Don't know when he's actually going to take the field. So I went with Justin Jefferson being locked up because even when Kirk was here, and Kirk will always be better than what fans said, but also never be as good as the apologists said. But at least with Kirk, when he was here, we kind of assumed, okay, you've got a quarterback that you are going to try to build around. Did it work? No.
So you can start your season at 8-8.
But other than Justin Jefferson, what on earth were you building around? You do have a very good set of tackles.
Yes.
What team builds their franchise around their tackles? Maybe you should, to be honest, like you build a hockey team from the back end out. Maybe you start with a football team and build around your offensive line, but nobody does that. So Vensey Glenn talks constantly about finding an identity. I was afraid the Vikings didn't have one. With Justin Jefferson being the leader of this team, whatever that means, at least you know what you're building around, and we should be fired up about that.
All right, well, what makes your head explode?
The fact that a running game doesn't seem to have to exist in the mind of our young genius head coach. Now, again, I realize this is why we can't have nice things, because the previous coach with Mike Zimmer and Clint Kubiak, it could be 3rd and 14. We were going off tackle left. But the short yardage failures bug me to no end because we're throwing no matter what. We need to be able to just move the chains every once in a while. And I think this year it's going to be more important than ever because you don't think you have a stud arm at quarterback that you can go, well, we'll just go get it because we have this player. Find a running game to at least be balanced. And I know that was never KOC's thing, but not having it has driven me bonkers long enough. And I know it's a passing league. I get it, but it makes my head explode.
So I'm gonna go with
it's the Cincinnati tush push PTSD kind of thing.
I'm gonna go with the Aaron Jones theory, the kind of the idea behind it, because Green Bay had Brett Favre, and they let Aaron Rodgers sit behind Brett Favre, and when he came out, and then
so you think Ty Chandler will be Zeus at some point?
And then Love sat behind Rodgers, and man, his first year without Rodgers, man, he was really good. Ergo, we're going to sign Sam Darnold, and you watch. JJ is going to sit behind Sam Darnold, and he is going to be amazing because it worked in Green Bay. And it's like, guys, like, I hope you're right, but could we ixnay on the Green Bay love and just realize that, you know, that's a wise idea, but let's quit pointing to Rodgers.
Well, and the difference is guys were sitting behind future Hall of Famers.
Correct.
JJ McCarthy right now is sitting behind a potential Hall of Shamer. It's completely different.
It's you know, you're going to point at the success that Aaron Rodgers had. Okay, there's Hall of Fame guy. And now you want to point at Love, and it's like, okay, he had a good year. He had one good year. He's in year 4. Let's hope McCarthy does all those positive things, but let's not have it be because Green Bay was successful. I'm a little tired with the narrative.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. With the Vikings, there's too many things to list that make your head explode. I mean, we could have taken the low-hanging fruit and, well, Kwesi can't draft and we're paper thin again and this is really hard to watch at times. Really, what I could have said makes my head explode is that everybody in the secondary is my height because
well, that's not totally
balls
true.
don't have to be thrown accurate. They just have to be thrown high, and that becomes frustrating. Now, with Shaq Griffin, et cetera, different guys in the secondary could be different this year, but if you go back to the last time you watched the Purple play football, that made my head explode.
Well, let's preface that by saying the good guys are your height. They got all kinds of tall guys that aren't any good.
Right. That's fair.
They got their best ones are a little shorter. All right, let's finish up with the team.
They've got the Felton Spencer and Luke Longleys of corners.
They do. All right, let's go with the team that's currently in session. What is the thing that makes your head get all fired up?
Well, first of all, on a personal level, it's just my love of baseball. I do think that when it comes to baseball, you'll understand this analogy. When it comes to Major League Baseball, I'm a Minnesota Wild fan. You can't do much wrong for me. The Twins could be 38-55, and I'm probably still watching because I love the sport. So for me personally, it's just different. But the Twins, I look at a game like last night, which is unfortunate, and they blew in a number of ways, and it was a tough loss, and you should score 12, and you should win all these other things. But you look at this team, and even though it looked like Rocco quit with some of the personnel changes he made, the team didn't quit. I do think there's a lot of gumption to this Twins team, and the ironic part to me is the resilience that they keep showing from a farm system standpoint, because you could sit there and go, going into this season, you thought Eddie Julian was going to be a big part of what they're doing. Going into this season, you hoped Alex Kirilloff was going to be a big part of what they're doing. Going into this season, you hoped Matt Wallner was going to be a big part of what they're doing. And you hope Royce Lewis is going to be a big part of what they're doing. Well, all of those players are either not there or injured. Take the injury part out because Royce will be back. So I'm going to put Royce into the future of this team. And you look at it and you just go around the infield. You have potentially a year or two from now, Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, Brooks Lee, and Jose Miranda as your infield. You look pretty good.
Yeah.
You put Byron Buxton, who seems to be figuring out how to hit a little and is still a very good defensive center fielder in center, and you're fine. Max Kepler somehow doesn't suck anymore. He's not as consistent as you hope for, but he's not 210 Max Kepler either. And then you just figure out who you want to play left field. I like Larnach. Everybody likes Castro. You know, you've got a team that looks pretty good.
And your number one prospect is your left fielder of the future, and
right.
Jenkins.
So the future is very bright. And
your catcher can play.
And too many times when we say the future of a team is bright, it's a way of saying, well, disregard the fact that the present isn't very good. With the Twins, that's not true. They're right in the thick of this. This is a good baseball team. Now, there are lots of reasons that they could be great, and it's part of what makes my head explode, but I'll let you go with your positive first.
It is that the fact that as average as it feels the Twins have been all year, it's like, ugh, man, this, that, and the other. They're on pace to win 90.
Right.
Like, I have to remember that. I think everybody else should remember that as well. We can gripe about where the Twins are at. They're still on pace to win 90, which is kind of amazing. The part that makes my head explode, and you mentioned him just a minute ago, Royce Lewis is the guy. Okay, Royce Lewis has played about 160 games
about 100
in his career.
About 100. I think you gave him 60.
Now, he's been very, very, very good, but we've been down this road with our center fielder, right? Buxton is the guy. I was one of the lead people saying Buxton is the guy. All these injuries have just turned him into a guy. Now, a really good guy, but all those things that we loved about him have been sapped because of injury. Let's not anoint Royce yet. I mean, he has been anointed by most Twins fans. Let's just let him heal.
I agree with you. So the part that makes my head explode, and I probably didn't leave myself enough time for this, it's kind of the inconsistencies of Rocco. The narrative is he just goes by analytics and doesn't manage with his gut. I don't fully agree because as much as he does play analytics, it seems to depend on the guy. Because you look at last night, and the minute a lefty came in, Trevor Larnach was done, and Manuel Margot was playing, and Margot made another error. Margot struck out twice during the big rally in the ninth. Larnach was out because lefty-lefty wasn't something he wanted. But if the same situation presents itself, righty-righty against Kyle Farmer's hitting.
Yep.
If it's Vasquez, he's hitting, which drives me nuts anyway. But it just seems like, and I understand veterans get a little bit more of a tip of the cap than young guys, but if you're going to play analytics, play him. He doesn't consistently do it. There was a situation last weekend where he brought in a relief pitcher to turn Jorge Polanco around. And I thought, okay, switch hitter. Obviously, they know Polanco backwards and forwards. This has got to make sense as to why they turned him around. No sooner did they do that Bally put the stats up. Jorge hit better and more powerful from the side they moved him to. If you're doing analytics, it's not Bill James. Whose book are you using? And I love Rocco. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. You can really look at some of that stuff and shake your head. He has a lot of shake your head moments. And his winning percentage is the best in team history. I get it. But he makes a lot of decisions.
But we know there are players that must have incriminating pictures of him somewhere by the way that they still get to make appearances.
Speaking of the 2 strikeout guy yesterday.
And Josh Winder getting way too many pitches and letting the Astros blow that game open. That made my head explode as well. Baby, you're a firework. Katy Perry told us so. Segment 1 is done. We're a little bit behind. Dave Hoops is waiting in the wings. We'll be right back. Northland Sports Page. I'm Brian Prudhomme. He's Dave Cook. We're here till noon. You better be too. We'll be right back. Celebrating the birthday of America a couple days late. Not looking too bad for 248. Also celebrating a couple of days late, the birthday of one Dave Hoops. He is certainly not 248, and he's always looking good. He sounds good, too. We'll hear from him very shortly. Hoops Brewing, of course, one of our illustrious sponsors. Dave Cook, you've got a nice list. You've got something to say first.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you were just totaling the ages of both presidential candidates there in the 248.
No, 248 would have been low.
Got it. All right, let's start with the original Arola Architecture Studio. Blackwoods, including their locations in 2 harbors. Proctor, Tavern on the Hill, Blackwater, right downtown and on London Road. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart Spike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Implement Screen Printing, Krause Heating and Cooling, your carrier HVAC authorized dealer, and Assisted Living Locators, free to use. Help your loved ones locate assisted living, memory care, and independent living. www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth is where you're going to find them, Brian. And, of course, our next guest, the proprietor of Hoops Brewing.
Dave Hoops is that proprietor of Hoops Brewing. Hoops Brewing, one of our favorite spots. Dave, I know you said you were already there a couple times this week. We will be there a couple times in a row following this Saturday's show's completion. Look for us at Hoops on the 13th and the 20th, both for the Northland Sports Page and for Monster Weekend Kickoff. Monster Weekend Kickoff this week, of course, follows this show. Speaking of the Harbor Monsters, I will be at Hoops Brewing tonight as part of the watch party as the Monsters are on the road to take on the Lunkers. So always plenty of good reason to go to Hoops Brewing. One of my favorite reasons is you just might see Dave Hoops. We get to talk to him right now. Dave, good morning, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen, and happy belated 4th of July to you as well.
Yes,
so that's a thing.
Which means happy belated birthday to you. How was the big celebration, whether it was 4th or birthday or yes?
Well, it's great. I don't really make a big deal out of it because America does. It's a good day, and every year it's pretty hard to not have a good day or a good time on the 4th of July when it happens to be your birthday. It's perfect.
That is very fair, and Mother Nature cooperated this year. It's been some pretty nice weather around Duluth here this past week, and it looks like next week looks just as good. Is that helping the outdoor portion of Hoops Brewing? Because I like to hang out there when I can too.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because when it's sunny, we're open and people really enjoy it. It's kind of a truncated. We've cleaned it up and made it smaller and more intimate. It works great. And speaking of good weather, we never talk about this either, but I haven't mentioned it. But every Thursday we started a running club down there, and people have been showing up, and we're getting 15, 20 people out on the run, and then they come back and hang out, ideally outside if it's nice out. So it's a good thing.
Absolutely, as is the music scene in this town. I know we're all big on that, and Hoops Brewing had to be bustling because you had Hairball on the 3rd, and then you had Trampled. You got to have a lot of good music connoisseurs stopping by for a beer.
Well, yeah, Trampled, this is a good thing. It's a good thing for Duluth. I'm so glad that the boys give back this way, and 10,000 people down there today, and these are kind of our people. We go way back. Some of the band members used to work with me at the brew house, if you can imagine that, and they would play there. And so they're giving back, and so a lot of familiar faces will be pre-gaming or post-gaming down at the brewery, especially if it's nice out. I think the outdoor section would be a really cool place to hang out today, out in the beer garden.
Well, Dave, it is really good to hear from you, and I sent you a text the other day thanking you for having the atmosphere that you have there, as it's one of the requested spots for us to take guests. But I did want to bring up something, guys, that I ran into the other day, just as a thought exercise, right? So we were at a location up on the shore, and the wait time to sit down and eat was well over an hour. and a guy behind us finally stood up and got all huffy and said, "Oh, you dang tourists." He did not use the word dang. Tourists, I hate the fact that you come and take over our restaurants, and stormed out. Now, it's kind of a tourist-built area, right? So,
well, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say. If not for those folks, those restaurants may not exist as well.
Right. So I guess, Dave, one of the questions I was going to ask, but I think it's appropriate now, is talk to us about the impact that tourists make on the brew house.
Well, first and foremost, there's never going to be a wait if you're coming into Hoops.
That's true.
Maybe 5 minutes, right? The place is big enough, and that's not a problem. Number two, of course, we treasure all the tourism dollars that come into Canal Park. And I have to repeatedly tell my friends and other people, locals who don't want to come down there, due to that, some of that and parking and such, but, we have free parking at Hoops, and it's kind of a little known secret. There's usually a space behind the brewery. And so typically we don't really have an impact where the tourists affect the overall. The thing is, the winter months are what they are. So all of us should be grateful and happy that we have such a beautiful city to live in, and economically, these people help us. So we just grin and bear it.
4,000%.
Try to put a smile. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And what I would add is this, because I've done it when I've had to wait at a restaurant. My first question at said restaurant, assuming there's a bar in the area, is what do you have for your Hoops rotator? I have sat watching a sporting event on TV at Restaurant Bar du Jour, enjoying a Hoops, waiting for my table. Nothing wrong with that rather than leaving in a huff.
Well, and the other thing is if you sit next to somebody that has a different accent or something, it could be from the South or wherever, ask them what they've seen. Ask them what they've done. Like, engage. It's kind of fun. You learn a lot of stuff. Frankly, you learn a lot of stuff about your town.
You do. In fact, I want to learn a little bit about Dave Hoop's opinion, because I want to go back to that first segment. If you heard it, Dave, we talked about, in conjunction with the 4th of July, what fires you up about a respective team. We did Vikes, Wild, Wolves, Twins. And then what frustrates you, aka makes your head explode, about said teams. Now, on this show, you are well known as the ray of sunshine, especially in comparison to Dave and myself. Do you have takes in that angle for each one?
I don't right off. I just arrived back home, and so I didn't catch all of that. I will say, like, for example, last night when I got back and I watched the Twins come back, my entire attitude was like, no, this is not impossible. No, this is not a surprise, and they're going to win. Well, they came up short, right? But it's the rooting for and the believing in your teams. And people complain about sports like they complain about politics.
Right.
Let's just come together a little bit and stick behind our teams. There's a lot of optimism out there. And all the people banging on the Twins have a much better record than they did last year. They're within sight. They're 6 games back. They're going to be fine. I think they're in the wild card, right? So I'm not answering your question that well. I'm sorry, because I don't have ready answers. I apologize about that. But in general, I try not to get too negative about this stuff and driving me crazy. The money, the contracts that just went out in the NBA this week, on the other hand, the beautiful NHL free agency day where we had so much movement and all these teams. I mean, Nashville, out of nowhere, all of a sudden people are talking about them. This is a good thing, but the money is so staggeringly high that you can't expect Kirk Cousins to bring you a Super Bowl because he's getting paid $50 million. It just doesn't work that way, right?
See, I think you did a great job answering our question, because you just morphed a bunch of sports into that dissertation, because you covered the NFL, you covered the NHL, and you talked a little MLB off the top. And I think that's fair, because Dave, you remember Dave Cook, you heard me say, I like the amount of gumption this team has, the lack of quit in the Twins, when I easily could have gone the other way and said, the Twins have become the Vikings, all these one-score games, and one year they're winning a bunch and now they're not, because the Twins have lost 7 straight one-run games. But sports is that way. I think Dave Hoops nails it quite well.
I agree, but he was also right on the 13-12. I mean, it does sound like they shanked a field goal there.
Well, and the crazy part about 13-12 is you look back at that game, and if you get a chance, try to Google a catch that the Houston right fielder made, barehanded basically after taking it off the wall.
Yep.
That game was littered with good defensive plays, and 13-12, you think, okay, they were playing at Wheeler. There was a slow pitch game that broke out. The defense was actually very good last night, but again, I think Dave Hoops nails it just in saying, I won't say sports is just entertainment, because I don't like that mantra, but sports is entertaining, I'll die on that hill.
Yes, I agree with you that sports is all about being entertained and having a release from all the real stuff.
Absolutely. Speaking of a release from all the real stuff, we get to have Dave Cook's world be part of ours with his good questions for today.
All right, so this is going to go back to what we experienced at Hoops because it was a positive experience. But I kind of want to get an idea, Dave and Brian, what makes a great bartender?
Oh, that's a good one. Obviously, we've all heard the bartenders are the clergy of
right.
away from the church, right? But what makes a great bartender is the ability to make a person feel at home and heard. Now, when the tourists are here, let's go back to that, and the bar's 3 or 4 deep, and people are obnoxiously trying to get a beer, you will see 90% of the time the person who is, quiet and stands there respectfully will be served by that bartender before others. Now, we want to make sure that the bartender is a great listener and a person that is able to talk about almost anything that the customer wants to talk about, and a friendly person who makes eye contact and knows a whole lot about beer but doesn't volunteer it unless asked, as opposed to telling us all about, what they should or shouldn't do. It's all about customer service and friendliness and sincerity. And you have to look hard to find this sometimes.
So I really shouldn't tack on to this at all, because here's a gentleman in Dave Hoops that hires bartenders and has very, very good ones. So everything he said I agree with, and nobody perhaps knows better. The only thing I will add that I love that your brewery does, and a lot of places do this, but your place is very good about it, Dave, is the world of samples, because it just helps. Because people can talk about, and it's almost like NBA and NHL draft when they do comparisons of this guy's game is likened to the next Oscar Robertson or what have you, and you kind of roll your eyes because you're like, he hasn't played a minute yet. Well, they can tell you about this beer tastes a little bit like this domestic that you're used to, or this is more like this IPA that you may have bought at a liquor store, and that resonates. But at the same time, the bartender that will be helpful that way and say, do you want to try a sample of it, so they know you don't waste your money on something you end up not liking, that goes a long way. And I've watched your staff do that with multiple newbies, if you will, to your place. I think it means a lot.
Well, yeah, thank you. And that's again, the education. We put our people through a thing called the Cicerone training, which is a beer expert thing, and everybody that works there has to have it. The idea, though, is to be able to guide somebody to something they'll like and not just tell them what they'll like. And giving samples, to your point, is the way to go with that. One of.
And I also like kind of the chameleon ability of their personality. If you come in jovial and maybe you're part of a bachelor or bachelorette party, a bartender can match your energy. If you come in exhausted and you've had a long day and I just want a beer, this day's been rather forgettable, the bartender that can relate to you, and it can be both ends of the spectrum, means a lot. Dave Cook, your questions mean a lot. You got more, or do you have more bartender help?
No, I was letting you guys go. That was a great conversation, actually. So my next question, we're going to go back to the toy box, as Dan Barrera would say. Okay, so we've all heard the phrase, well, that trade was brought in the key piece to a championship or to wins and losses or key to the playoffs. I have a couple of key piece trades that Minnesota teams have made in the past, and I kind of want to get your take. Maybe rank them, talk about them for a second. Great key piece trades. Let's start with the most recent, and that's Mike Connolly, the key piece to getting Anthony Edwards over. The second one is Shannon Stewart, who kicked in the Twins, were under 500 the year they got him.
I was hoping for the record he'd be on this list. Go ahead.
And then got to the playoffs because of him. And then the easy, low-hanging fruit, though, Steve Hutchinson. You brought in Steve Hutchinson as the key piece, the linchpin.
The poison pill?
Well, that was how they got him.
Right.
So those are the three key piece additions that I had for you. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
So you want us to rank them from best to worst?
Yeah.
All right. Dave Hoops, you go ahead.
Well, I'm going to go personal just because I like Old Man Conley so much. And it was an afterthought when they made that trade because of Rudy. And everybody's, he's too old, this and that, everything. But, he has definitely been the glue. And now they got a young guy for him to work behind. So I like that trade so much. And I think it really paid off beautifully. So I would rank that one number 1. Shannon number 2, Hutchinson number 3, and Brian, you should go forward because you have so much better take on the Shannon trade, I'm sure.
Well, you think I do, but remember when we were at Hoops together a week ago, and a lot of what we did on the radio, I kind of said, yep, what Dave said. So I may have a deeper take or a different take than you, but our rankings 1, 2, and 3 end up the same. Because Steve Hutchinson, I want to apologize to him. I'm going to put him third, and it's not his fault. It's his position's fault. You don't make or break an NFL team with a guard unless you've got everything else. And they didn't. Now, to be fair, Steve Hutchinson is a Hall of Fame caliber player. And you can argue, and you'd probably be right, that the Vikings haven't had legitimate guard play since him. So he's unbelievable. But we know the way the NFL works. If you don't have a stud quarterback, if you don't have a stud wide receiver, if you don't have a stud running back, if you can't rush the passer, you're going to struggle. The Vikings were okay in a lot of those other areas, so it didn't do enough to elevate the team. Number 2 is the Shannon Stewart deal, because before that deal, they weren't making the playoffs. They were buried at the All-Star break. And you got a guy that injected some life into a clubhouse, injected a lot of life into a lineup as a leadoff hitter, different sort of catalyst. He wasn't my favorite defensive left fielder, but I have a hard time telling you who is. You look at that season, and I know the Twins didn't get very far in said playoffs because that was part of their record-setting postseason losing streak. But there is no postseason without Shannon Stewart that season. The reason I put Mike Conley's deal number 1 is twofold. It brought a franchise out of almost a total abyss. The Timberwolves weren't a talker until recently, and now they're almost the lead talker, as in the franchise Minnesotans are probably most proud of, not called the Minnesota Lynx. The other thing you didn't mention, though, I'll put the Conley trade number 1 because you also got Alexander Walker in it, and he became a vital piece. Conley was the centerpiece, but the spare parts turned out to be a big deal.
All right, I have one last question. Do I have
Wait
time?
a minute. I want your ranking on this. You got to be quick about it.
Oh,
but
yeah. Conley's 1, but I think Hutch is 2. And I think Hutch is 2 because he changed an attitude. Like, they were soft, and then they stopped being soft, especially next to McKinney. Okay, the last question, and this is for my Green Bay Packer-loving fans, because it's getting a little tiring.
Do they listen to this show?
Yes, they do.
Andy Roberts loves it. That's about the only guy I can think of.
All right, guys, I'm going to force you to choose between Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Like, you can't have, they're both really good, because they are. But if money's on the table, if it's who's the better, who do you want?
Just football? Just football. Okay. Dave Hoops, go ahead. I'm glad I don't have to go first.
Who do you got?
Oh, this is a non-question. It's going to be Brett, and it's going to be Brett a million times, and it's going to be Brett a million more times, and because let's just go to the common, like today's Aaron Rodgers, which is the weirdo or whatever. I still like Brett more because of his Brettness, his gunslinger, his ability to be a leader and be looked at by his teammates as a guy who's going to win the game. As a Vikings fan, I didn't like playing against him, but I always liked him. I don't like Aaron Rodgers, and that does matter a little bit. I don't want him to fail, but when the Jets tanked last year, I didn't want him to be hurt. But there's not a good rooting interest, and Favre has a lot of holes in his game. But I'll take his first. How about that?
All right, so Dave Hoops, write this down. It's 10:52 in the morning on Saturday, July 6th. Brian Prudhomme and Dave Hoops finally disagreed on something, because that's the reason that I said just football. I wanted Dave Cook to confirm it, because just football, I am taking Aaron Rodgers. Dave Hoops made a lot of great points. Aaron Rodgers is a weirdo. He's a smug pain in the you-know-where. I don't need that locker room presence. I don't need that personality. I don't need anything to do with him. But you know what? He's smug because he won a lot. He didn't make the gunslinger mistake. You look at Favre, his last pass as a Jet was picked. His last pass as a Packer was picked. His last postseason pass as a Viking was picked. Favre takes those chances, and it's fun until it burns you. Aaron Rodgers also took nondescript guys like Jeff Janis and turned them into actual weapons. Aaron Rodgers rarely, if ever, lost the game for you. Brett Favre would win games for you, but he lost them too. Everything else, take Brett Favre, because I had him on my favorite team and I liked it. But just football, give me Rodgers.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that part, Brian, because the key to me is that Rodgers took receiver. The Green Bay Packers derelicted their duty in getting him wide receivers. He created wide receivers out of garbage, and they never got him solid talent.
How many times have we said you can be a jerk and be good at your job? Aaron Rodgers should be number one with a bullet.
And Favre had guys, when you got started with Sterling Sharp.
Yep.
And so you had a chance to make those mistakes, and your receivers bailed you out. Rodgers had abysmal receivers, Randall Cobb and everybody else he made. And so I think it's Rodgers for that reason.
That is very fair, and that was a fun conversational segment. A good place to have great conversation is Hoops Brewing. Dave Hoops, to close it out, give everybody great reasons to get on down there. It's a holiday weekend, still plenty left of it.
Yep, come on down today for a little bit of pre-trampled for sure. We've got bingo coming up, as you know. I think it's the 17th. And we're pouring a lot of light summer beer stuff. We talked a lot about the Shandy, but we have the Radler, which is a lighter soda mixed with a light beer. And of course, we have a bunch of new beers coming out for the All Pints Festival in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about that'll be another huge day down there, and everybody comes up here for the big fest.
Absolutely. So July is one of my favorite months, and that last Saturday is one of the best ones. The All Pints Festival is certainly a highlight on my calendar. Talking to you every Saturday, Dave Hoops, is also a highlight on my calendar. We will see you down at your place both next Saturday and the Saturday after. Thanks for the time again, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And Dave, thanks again for that bat. It's right behind the bar. It's proudly displayed. So have a good day, you guys. Thank you.
You as well. That's our guy, Dave Hoops. He is the proprietor of Hoops Brewing and one of our illustrious sponsors. Northland Sports Page continues. We play buy or sell next. Stick around. We'll be right back. Little coming to America as we do a happy belated 4th of July. Yes, that's a thing now here on the Northland Sports Page. It's July 6th. Before we get to buy or sell, we've got some breaking news, and it is not of the positive variety in any way, shape, or form. But Dave Cook, you found it right as we sent Dave Hoops off to break there.
Yeah, 4 minutes ago, the Minnesota Vikings just posted that we are devastated by the news of Kyrie Jackson's death during an overnight car accident. Kyrie Jackson, Brian, was the 4th-round cornerback pick out of Oregon who started his college career at Alabama. 6'4" kid who they were super excited to have, and football takes a second stage right now to the life snuffed out of a young man who had everything in front of him.
Right.
To see that sort of stuff is just devastating, and yeah.
So some tough news there. Obviously, a kid that had his dreams on the verge of coming true. You remember the story that he was in a store when he got the news that he was picked and told the clerk at the store, "Excuse me, ma'am, I've got to step out right now. I've got to take this call." So what should have been an exciting potential NFL football career, not only is that cut short, but more importantly, as you said, the life is cut short. Life is too short.
Yeah, life is too short. So again, we say it all the time, hug those around you. Don't take it for granted because, there you are.
So again, rest in peace, Vikings 4th-round pick, cornerback out of the University of Oregon, Kyrie Jackson. No good segue off of that, but we'll move on and play buy or sell. How the game works is this. I'm going to give a statement from each of the 4 major sports leagues, and we're going to go a little bit faster today to save some time. If Dave agrees, he's going to say buy, and he's going to tell me why. If Dave disagrees, he's going to say sell, and he's going to tell me why. Dave has his take, of course, to be responsible for, and then the order with which we play.
Yep, we're going to start with the National Hockey League.
All right, so the National Hockey League, this is a good segue off of what we did in the opening topic with some of our frustration with money spent on middling veterans. And you mentioned the Wild do it again and again. Did they do it again this week? Buy or sell that the re-signing of Middleton is a mistake by the Wild?
I'm going to sell that, Brian. I think that Jake Middleton is going to fill a role for his entire contract. And it's not crazy enough that it's going to stop them from promoting guys that haven't really performed. He's not going to get in the way of Zev, but the other guys they've had, Lambos and O'Reilly, and all those guys Jack Pert hasn't taken those steps to solidify a third pair. Middleton will be able to be a third pair guy while he's still here. He's not taking anybody's spot. So I think it's a good sign.
I'm going to sell it for similar reasons because I do think as long as you're paying him middling money, you're okay with it.
Paying him Middleton money.
And you're right. Instead of getting in the way of the next big thing, he's not gotten in their way. The defensemen that have come up have gotten chances. And has it been wonderful? No. Has it been bad? No. Would you prefer younger? Probably. But would you prefer dependability? I think Middleton gives you enough of that.
Yeah. And again, I think he can move him down the pairs until he's done with his contract, and he doesn't get in anybody's way. I think it's a very good signing. Now ask me about the other guy, and I'm going to say, gosh, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say Dave Hoops talked about the monumentous free agency period in the NHL, and the Wild weren't exactly a huge part of it, and we expected that with the financial situation where it is. And maybe Middleton's signing wasn't what you were looking for, but that's what you got. I don't think it's going to help this team, but I don't think it's going to hurt him either. So right. Middle is not just his name, it's kind of his mantra.
Right. All right, so let's go to the National Basketball Association.
All right, the NBA, kind of similar. The Timberwolves have lost Kyle Anderson. Slow-mo is slowly making his way out of here. But Joe Ingles is here. Buy or sell, the Timberwolves as an organization should prefer Joe Ingles over Kyle Anderson.
So I'm going to give you two answers on this. I think Ingles...
Wait a minute. It's a buy or sell. You can't say both.
I'm buying on lay-by. I think that...
Buying it on layaway?
Yeah.
You pay later?
I think that Ingles fits this team better, right? I really, really, really wish Kyle Anderson hadn't gone to Golden State. Like, he's one of those...
He can fit there rather well.
He's going to be one of those guys that tears the Timberwolves up for eternity. So I wish he wouldn't have gone there, but yes, I think Joe fits better. So I guess I'm buying.
I think it makes a great segue off of what you just asked with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, even though neither Kyle Anderson or Joe Ingles are of that ilk in terms of caliber in the NBA. If it's just basketball, you probably do prefer Joe Ingles in terms of what the Timberwolves need. Now, Kyle Anderson as a stat sheet is probably more because he's one of those guys that doesn't look like he's impacting the game, and then you check the box score and he's got 6, 8, and 9. You're like, wow, he was that close to a triple-double? Hardly seemed like he was out there. Joe Ingles doesn't look like he's going to be that guy, but he can be dead-eye shooter from 3, and that is one thing a la Fred Hoiberg, a la even Wally Zerbiak, this team needs.
He doesn't play a lick of defense. That's why he's not a starter.
And that scares me a little because this team's hallmark this season was supposedly its defense. Now, it drives me bonkers the way this team defends the three-point shot. I should have brought that up in segment 1. But if Joe Ingles can nail the three-point shot, he will be useful to this team.
Helps him a lot.
The part that radio talk show hosts, not unlike us, will claim to know and we don't, is what was Kyle Anderson's locker room presence like. It seemed like Anthony Edwards had really kind of a magnetic type relationship with Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson not being here shouldn't hurt the Wolves. If it trickles down and hurts other guys, we're in trouble.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's go to the National Football League.
All right, so here's some of the fun that we get to have. We were talking about this before the show. CBS Sports put out this week the top 25 NFL players of all time, which I think is so difficult because positions are so different. There are 2 Vikings on the list, top 25 players of all time. Buy or sell, Dave Cook, that you believe you can name them?
I'm going to buy, even though I've proven today when I was trying to write down the entire list that maybe I should be hardcore selling this.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Moss.
Okay. For the record, I'm not playing because I'm looking at it, but had I had this question posed to me, I would have said buy, and I only would have got half of them right.
I think I know the other one.
Okay.
I think it's Moss and Favre.
It's not.
Oh, is it Moss and Page?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm surprised that was your second guess because I would have said something to the effect of Moss and Carter, Moss and Adrian.
Yeah, I had Page written down.
I didn't think of Favre because I don't think of him as a Viking. I suppose I could have said, well, there's more than 2 on here if there would have been former Vikings that had illustrious careers elsewhere on the list. Do you want to hear very quickly all 25?
Oh, sure, because I guessed.
I was going to say you were trying before the show.
All right.
25, wide receiver Don Hudson. 24, tight end Tony Gonzalez. 23, running back Gale Sayers. 22, safety Rod Woodson. 21, defensive tackle Alan Page. 20, left tackle Anthony Munoz.
Got him.
19, running back Emmitt Smith. 18, quarterback John Elway.
Got it.
17, wide receiver Randy Moss.
Got it.
16, defensive tackle Joe Green. 15, defensive tackle Aaron Donald.
Got it.
14, linebacker Ray Lewis.
Got it. 13,
quarterback Dan Marino. 12, quarterback Johnny Unitas. 11, quarterback Joe Montana. 10, linebacker Dick Butkus. 9, running back Barry Sanders. 8, quarterback Patrick Mahomes. 7, defensive end Reggie White. 6, linebacker Lawrence Taylor. 5, quarterback Peyton Manning. 4, running back Walter Payton. 3, running back Jim Brown. 2, wide receiver Jerry Rice. And number 1, the GOAT, quarterback Tom Brady.
Got it. I did pretty well in the last 10.
And I don't hate that list. Next week, if you remember when we go to Hoops Brewing, bring the list off a website called Hoop Habit that better stick to hoops because they put out a top 25 baseball hitters of all time. And as the kids say, it was all cringe.
Yeah, they got at least 12 of those, right?
Right. Something to that effect. Yeah. All right. So Major League Baseball to close it.
Yes.
the Twins have a seemingly good infield in the future. I brought it up already with Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, Brooks Lee, Jose Miranda, especially the current hitting ability of Jose Miranda. But buy or sell that Royce Lewis, given the injury history, is already done as a third baseman.
So I'm going to say sell, because I think the bigger concern is the fact that he, at the end of before he got injured, he was really struggling throwing to the point where, that ball that he
But see, that's where I buy. Go ahead.
The ball that he threw over the head, those are the kind of throws that cause the yips. And the yips are they'll kill careers. So I think you're going to see him as a first baseman. So
you're buying that he's actually done as a third baseman?
Yeah.
Because you said sell and then gave all the reasons he shouldn't play third.
I meant buy then. I meant buy.
Because I'll tell you what, I'm going to sell because of the way the Twins operate. He'll come back and he'll play third base as soon as he's able to and come back and do that. But I'm going to buy that he should be done as a third baseman. Brooks Lee should be over there. You don't have a legitimate everyday second baseman. Willie Castro's done fine being over there for you. Kyle Farmer is still on this team because Rocco loves him, reasons unknown. But you don't have a second baseman. You thought it was Julian. It doesn't look like it is. If Royce Lewis can make a shorter throw, I do worry about maybe at second base having to have a little more range. And if the quad is the problem, that could be an issue. But I don't think you need, with the ability to throw, he doesn't seem to have. You don't need Royce Lewis at third base anymore. No, but I'm going to sell that he won't be there because they'll put him back as soon as he's healthy.
The real sticking point is Miranda, right? I mean, is he a permanent DH? Probably. But if you're going to play him in the field, you're playing him at first.
And is Kirilloff ever going to make it back here either? They've got a lot of
tough one.
They've got a lot of corner options. How good are those options?
That last bit's the best question of them all. What do you do?
We've got a great option as to how we're going to start hour number 2. July has a lot of great things still ahead. One of the things is the Paris Summer Olympic Games. The Northland has a broadcaster with Northland roots going out there. Kara Goucher, she's next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.